Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. My name is Alyssa, and you are watching my 2-year on HRT video. I'm going to reflect on those 2 years, and it's not just about the HRT, because when I started HRT, it was almost simultaneous with living full-time as a woman, presenting as female in public consistently. So it's really the beginning of my transition fully for me. Now, that doesn't always coincide that way for everybody. Some people start living as female before they start HRT. Some start HRT and remain in the closet for a little while. But for me, it does happen to coincide. So that's why I particularly really love to mark that occasion, because it's not just taking hormones, but it's the start of my transition overall. So I'm going to reflect back on those 2 years and how I've changed and some of the effects of HRT. But first, I want to talk about a couple of issues related to transition timelines and things that I've been thinking about after creating my transition timeline. So I'll start there, and then I'll get into my HRT journey. If you have not already, please hit the subscribe button below. You will have another opportunity at the end of this video to hit a subscribe button that will come up on your screen with my little face on it. So without further ado, let us get started. Okay, so let me start by talking about my 2-year transition timeline, because I've been thinking about some things in relation to that. Even before I published it, I was in deep thought about a lot of things, which, by the way, if you have not seen my 2-year transition timeline, then you should definitely check it out. There'll be a link to that at the end of this video. But I am reading a book called Whipping Girl by Julia Serrano. I've had it recommended to me for a long time, and I'm finally getting around to reading it. It's kind of like essential reading, I think, for those in the trans community. And not just for trans people, but just for anyone, particularly if you consider yourself a feminist, because she talks about feminism from her trans point of view. And it's a very interesting book. But the thing in particular that caught my eye in relation to the transition timeline is at the beginning of the book, she's talking about before and after pictures. And just basically the reaction of cis people, what cis people always want to know about her, and how cis people kind of treat her as just sort of this token, like this pet, like this, oh, you're trans. And I definitely have felt a little bit of that too, although it's well-intentioned. I know what she's talking about. But she mentions, like, well, cis people just always want to see your before and after pictures. Like, they're so obsessed with your before and after pictures. Well, I willingly posted my before and after pictures on my transition timeline. And, you know, I had to give some thought to that. Am I just, like, giving into that? Am I just like the monkey doing a little performance for the cis people? And ultimately, I say no. I don't feel like that's really what I'm doing, because that's not, for me, the purpose of posting the before or after pictures. The number one purpose of me doing that is so that other trans people who maybe have not come out yet can draw the same inspiration from that I drew from other people's transition timelines with their before and after pictures, because it showed me that that transformation is possible, that you could go from this very male presenting person to being as female or as feminine as you want. And not everybody wants to be super feminine, and that's totally cool too. But it showed me that you can go as feminine as you want to go, and it's totally possible. And that was an inspiration for me, so I hope that that can be an inspiration for others as well. So that's the main reason for not only my transition timeline, but for the reason for these videos that I do as well. Now, as for a cis audience, I feel like there's something there for them to. I had a friend who told me that she could really relate in that she was undergoing an entirely different kind of journey, but one that was also discovering herself and her true self, and realizing the things that she was doing in her life that were not helpful, that she didn't like about herself, and making that transformation within herself. So this was a more visual representation of that. So if you're cis and you can relate to that too, to your own life, I think that's wonderful as well. Also, I feel like us reading about the journey of a trans person hopefully will be informative, and especially when we're talking about, as I do a lot in my transition timeline, the psychological damage done, and just how deeply ashamed I felt and deeply afraid. So hopefully that can be enlightening for those who are not trans. So I think there's benefits in it. So I am not ashamed at all that I have put my before and after pictures, and I'm not ashamed of my transition timeline. The other thing, though, that I wanted to make clear, though, is that if you are trans and you're closeted, or you're just at the beginning of your journey, that my before or after picture does not indicate that taking HRT is going to magically make you go from this, scruffy looking bearded dude to someone who looks, pretty feminine. I think I've gotten compliments on some of the photos that I've used. So if you're really impressed by that, that is not just HRT, but what HRT did for me personally was to give me the confidence and help me believe in myself as a woman, to the point where I could do a lot of the things that helped that, before and after picture manifest itself. Okay, so now let's really get into the HRT of it all. And now, as I've said, it's the 2-year anniversary of me being HRT recently passed. It was on August 4th, and 2022, if you're watching this in the future. And it also roughly coincided with when I was living full-time as a woman, presenting as a woman in public on a full-time basis, on a consistent basis. So it really marks the beginning of my transition. So it was really fun for me to put together my transition timeline. I'm going to mention it one more time here because it was really interesting to look back on the photos at the beginning of my transition, or even before I started HRT and started coming out. I looked at a lot of photos from that era, that like June, July 2020 era. There's a lot of photos that I took of myself, and just how far that I've come, not only in just perfecting my look, not perfecting, it's not perfect, but getting it better, growing out my own hair, not having to wear those stupid wigs anymore, and just my style, my makeup, those sorts of things, how I've improved over time. Obviously, you can tell that by looking at the pictures, and that really stood out to me as well. But just for me personally, looking at those pictures, I can remember back to the emotions I was experiencing, the anxiety I was experiencing, the uncertainty, the nervousness of what I was about to do. And then at the beginning of my transition, up through like the first 3 or 4 months, just all the uncertainty that I was still feeling, a lot of the imposter syndrome that I was feeling then. No one else is going to look at those pictures and be able to see that, but I do, because I look at them and I remember how I felt during those time periods. So for me, it was very impactful looking at that, and helping me to realize just how far I've come not just in my look, my physical look, but just in my confidence and in myself and in myself as a woman. Because the thing is, like for me, it was not super noticeable as it's happening. The changes that occur, not only in my confidence, but just in my emotional being, are very subtle. And I get so caught up in my everyday life. I'm still working a full time job and those sorts of things. Photos are helpful for me to look back as I go along, not just now, 2 years later, but as I was going along and looking back. And also feedback from other people. Other people telling me that I am happier. And then when they say that, I go, oh yeah, I am. But it's not something that I'd stop to think about enough. Also, that I am more confident in myself. I've been told that I am more outgoing, which I believe is also true. I am not as. I'm always going to be a little bit shy, but I'm not as withdrawn as I used to be, because in retrospect, a lot of that had to do with not quite knowing how to relate to other people as a male. Even though I had been living that way for over 40 years, I still had never figured it out. So now that I'm feeling more and more into my natural feminine self, that it is just feels more natural for me to be myself, and it's easier to interact with people. So take some reflection to look at what like the emotional effects that HRT had, because I didn't have any of these extreme reactions that I saw other people's videos talk about, where they would just burst out into tears for no reason or anything like that. I never had any extreme emotional outbursts. It was more subtle. I did start to notice that a lot of the television shows that I watch, I might get teary-eyed a little more easily than I used to, or movies that I watch, I might get a little more teary-eyed. So those sorts of things. But it took feedback from other people to notice that I am more expressive of my emotions. That I will, look at something that I think is cute and go, "Oh, isn't that adorable?" Like I would hold back from saying something like that as a male, but it's just something that I feel even more intensely. It's hard to put into words. Now, as for some of the more physical effects of HRT, I've talked a lot about it in my previous HRT update videos, and it's going to vary from person to person. I feel like, especially how much breast growth you get, how much difference there is in hair growth or body hair growth, and things like that. But there are some general things. Definitely, I don't have to shave my legs as often. I can get away with shaving them far less often than I could when I first started on HRT. Same with other parts of my body. My face, I still have to shave every day. Otherwise, I do get a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow that I'm not a fan of, but I'm working on getting electrolysis for that. It's just a long, slow process. And breast growth, it's not as pronounced as perhaps other trans women that I've met, but I think it is enough to satisfy my dysphoria. I think the disappointing thing for me there is that just the way my body is shaped, my breasts are kind of spread out wide apart. I did a little bit of Googling on that, and I guess it has to do with the shape, just the shape of your rib cage, or just the shape of your body, and just some women have that. I mean, so I don't really have cleavage per se, but overall, like, I just feel that it's enough that I don't feel the dysphoria there that I did when I started this journey. And that too, like, not having that dysphoria, not having that weight on your shoulders also is very helpful in helping me to live the way that I want to live, get my right look, be more confident in myself. Having that dysphoria lessened. So I want to kind of wrap things up here. This has been a rambly video, but hopefully somebody's getting something out of this somewhere. So I did want to touch again on my age, the fact that I am 48 and I transitioned when I was 46, and that I know of someone personally who transitioned when she was 63. And I have read of people transitioning in their 70s. I think I might have even read of someone transitioning in their early 80s. So just remember that if you are someone who is struggling with whether or not to transition, do it on your own time when you are ready. There is no timeline, there's no timer, there's no such thing as being too old. I find it really comical when I've looked at Reddit threads and there's people in their early 20s like, isn't it too late for me to transition? My friends transitioned in when they were teenagers, and it's just too late now. How adorable. In your early 20s, you're a child. I don't mean to sound condescending, but I was a child when I was in my early 20s. You have so much more of your life ahead of you. If things go well, no accidents happen, you have so much of your life ahead of you. Your life has barely begun in your early 20s. So it's so cute when people in their early 20s are struggling whether it's too late. It's never too late. So if you are in your 20s, your 30s, or whatever, and you're not sure, don't feel pressured. Don't feel rushed. Do it when you feel ready. And if you never feel ready, then you never feel ready. I think there's this, common misperception put out there by transphobes that the trans people are out here to convert people. Ooh, we're out here to convert children. If you're cis, no amount of converting that myself or any other trans person attempted would do anything to you because you are not trans. So there's nothing we can do to change that any more than cis people can change the fact that we are trans. We cannot change your identity any more than you can change ours. So believe me, nobody's trying to convert anyone. Although I do try to be helpful, hopefully, to other people who are trans and are struggling with whether or not to begin transition, which is something that I struggled with for a long time. As I've said, people have begun transition older than I did at age 46. So no rush. Do it at your own time, or never do it if it's not right for you. That's my sage advice to close off this video. Thank you for watching my rambling. Please join me again next month as I will ramble again about the latest updates in my life as a trans woman, whatever I have to talk about. If you have anything that you'd like to hear me talk about, please leave it in the comments below, and please subscribe, and I will see you all very soon. Goodbye.